Excelsior, true believers! You are about to embark upon a journey, a trip to the 70s and 80s when mighty Marvel Comics ruled over all. The Defenders, Doctor Strange, the Champions, Deathlock, the Submariner, the Incredible Hulk, Killraven, the Son of Satan, the macabre Man-Thing, and all your other Bronze Age favorites every week appearing on Defenders Dialogue. Now here are your guides, Christopher Golden and Brian Keene.
Excelsior, true believers.
Excelsior indeed. Welcome back to another episode of Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene. That dulcet tone is Christopher Golden.
I didn't realize you were going to introduce me. We should.
I never know what I'm going to do, and now that this is my only podcast,
I know
I feel even more scatterbrained.
Do you feel free? Do you feel like the yoke has been cast off?
Oh my God, I feel so free. I've got so much goddamn writing done in the past month since ending that other podcast, you wouldn't believe. In fact, yesterday I was on a conference call with comic book editor Chris Ryall. You know Chris, of course.
Yeah.
And Rich Chismar. The three of us were talking about an upcoming project that I can't talk about, but.
Well, I know what it is. I'll tell everybody.
Okay, but it occurred to me. Normally, that day, that time, I would have had to rush through the call and go record a podcast, and I didn't have to. It was very freeing. It's been nice. I get more time with my kid. I get more time to write, and I get more time to talk about comic books with you,
which is very exciting. This is not, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think it's such a cool thing, and I know you'll appreciate it. And it may be over by the time people hear this, but I don't think so. We'll have to see. So I'm only telling you this because I think you'll appreciate it, and I think our listeners may be amused by it. It is, by the time people hear this, it's mid-October. Not only is Halloween around the corner, but also the election is around the corner.
And the Civil War. Don't forget the Civil War.
Civil War. Yes. I'm going to rewatch Captain America Civil War on Election Day, I think. You have met, you may not recall, but you have several times met my good friend Ashley Berg.
Oh, yes. I know Ashley.
Yeah. Ashley's awesome. We've been friends for many years. And one of the things I love about Ashley was that she is absolutely terrified of horror movies. I mean, terrified in a way that is amusing to sadists like me, but like that. My wife Connie would be like, "Leave her alone," because Ashley and I had this deal for years where, like, once a year, she would go to a horror movie with me, like a horror movie in my selection, or watch a horror movie with me. But then I had to leave her alone for the rest of the year.
Right.
So, like, when Nate Kenyon and Ashley and I went to see Paranormal Activity in the movie theater, I was like, yeah, it didn't bother me at all. I didn't find it frightening in any way. Nate and Ashley were on either side of me, and both of them were, like, sunken into their seats, whimpering in terror. I think Ashley may have peed herself a little. So Ashley wanted to raise some money politically, and I won't get into the politics end of it except to say that what she's doing is a fundraiser. And this morning she shared this, and later today I will be sharing this. She's calling out to people for their suggestions. She's going to watch 2 horror movies she's never seen before and live stream herself in the dark watching these horror movies the whole time, so we can all be sadists and appreciate the terror as she cries. She probably will cry.
Okay, now, how does she pick the 2? The highest donation gets to pick? Or?
No. The donations are going to be like, while she's live streaming herself, you'll tune in and, you know, she'll ask for people to donate while she's live streaming. But people are going to make suggestions for the movies, and I get to pick what the 2 movies are. And I'm urging her so far I have picked the two that I want, but I'm waiting to see what other people suggest.
Carpenter's The Thing has to be on this list somewhere.
Well, I don't know, because I understand what you're saying, but the two that are in my mind for her are The Descent and The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Both very good choices.
Because I think they'll scare the piss out of her.
Right.
And that is my intention. I mean,
see, and that is the difference between you and I as writers, because we're both going for the same effect ultimately.
Yes.
But you go with those two, and my immediate go-to in my head is Carpenter's The Thing and Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
Well, again, like Carpenter's The Thing is like one of my all-time favorite movies, but I'm thinking about the overall. See, Carpenter's The Thing is one of the greatest movies ever, but I don't know that it feels real. And there's something about both The Descent and The Autopsy of Jane Doe that doesn't cross a certain threshold. So I think that they will be more terrifying for her, and that is what I'm going for.
I don't know, man. I think in the year of the quarantine, Carpenter's The Thing feels truer than ever. No one trusts each other anymore, and we're all very tired.
Yes, maybe. But we'll see.
Well, speaking of scary things, Chris, today we continue our deep dive into Marvel's Man-Thing with issues 7 and 8. As Chris has said many times since we began our coverage of Man-Thing, he wishes it would just remain a horror book. But Steve Gerber insists on trying other genres within the confines of this horror book. So I will be curious to see what you think about these two issues.
Well, listen, we'll talk about 8 when we get to 8, but 7 I loved. I think 7, although it has a fantasy element to it, it still is a horror story in many ways, and it's a very imaginative horror story where the Man-Thing is concerned, and it doesn't go off into interdimensional barbarians. Yeah.
Or talking ducks.
Well, and again, like weirdly, like if Howard the Duck is with us, I think we can go on okay. But if we're going into parallel dimensions with Howard the Duck, you've lost me. And I know that seems weird. And again, not that you've lost me, I just am not going to enjoy it nearly as much. So,
right.
Gerber, Mike Plug on art with John Costanza on letters. Plug does the full art here. No inker. He does his own inks here. Now, I actually found, Brian, that one of the characters you keep coming back to makes his most interesting transitions here.
You talking about F.A. Schist?
I am.
Yeah, this is, as we've talked about, Schist is one of the major members of the Man-Thing's Rogues Gallery. He's a construction tycoon. Shades of 2020.
Right. And again, for those who are not regular listeners, perhaps there may be one. F.A. Schist is clearly, it spells out fascist.
That's right.
So let's be clear about that. But go ahead.
That's right. But he in these two issues particularly, Gerber doesn't overdo it, but he tries to build up some empathy with the reader for Schist. And we open with the closure of the F.A. Schist construction site. The Man-Thing's watching as they raise the construction site to the ground. And Schist and his scientist, Wickham, are standing there watching it.
Well, his assassin, Wickham.
Well, yeah. Scientist turned assassin.
Right.
They're watching it come down, and Schist is bemoaning, that, because of the oil shortage in America at the time and the fact that airlines are cutting back on flights, nobody needs another airport. And, this is costing him money. And then the Man-Thing just made things worse and killed his employees. And you almost feel sorry for the guy.
Well, Almost.
Almost.
I'd be very happy if the Man-Thing drowned him right now. So, and I don't think it's an accident. No, it is, of course, because we're flashing back in time. But it's ironic in any case that the foreman is wearing a MAGA hat. But we'll.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even notice that. Yeah, red ball cap in, what was this, 1976, I think this came out.
Yeah. In any case, Schist throws a stick at the Man-Thing, and it, sticks into him. And I thought that was going to be a story point, but it isn't. But the Man-Thing sort of wanders off, driven away by Schist's sort of rage and pain. Interestingly enough, he's driven away by that, and as he's walking through the Everglades, he's set upon, Brian, by of guys dressed in period costume, the period costume of the conquistadors, and they throw a net over him.
That's right.
They manage to gather him up.
That's right. And they it's a gorgeous splash page by Plug.
It is.
But what we notice here with these conquistadors is they are taking great pains not to harm the Man-Thing. One of them says, if our captain is correct, this struggle will only entangle him further into the net. So they it's very clear they want to capture him, not harm him.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I want to say as we get through this scene, massive kudos to Plug, because this imagery is tough to pull off.
It is.
So they've enwrapped the Man-Thing in this net, and they're dragging him through the Everglades, deeper into the Everglades than modern man has ever gone here. And the Man-Thing eventually just continues to drag and drag and drag. And then sort of like, I want to say like certain kinds of cheese or Play-Doh, the net eventually basically just sifts through the muck that comprises the Man-Thing's body.
Yeah, he oozes through the mesh and solidifies on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And it's great. It's a great bit. And then, of course, the conquistadors are wild, trying to figure out what the hell to do. We do get one of them. One of them gets off a classic Marvel Comics "Madre de Dios," which seems to be the best phrase in 70s Marvel.
That's right. Now, as we pointed out, the conquistadors seemingly meant him no harm. Okay, so the Man-Thing did not react to them. Now they know fear. And of course, that is the emotion the Man-Thing loathes. So he closes in on them. But then we cut to a very quick takeaway, and we can sum it up in two sentences. It's Richard, Rory, and Ruth, and their new friend from the circus, Ayla, however the hell. Ayla. I still can't. What is it?
Ayla.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that's how it should be pronounced. Anyway.
Yla. Ayla.
Ruth lets Richard know that she's leaving. She's taking off. Ayla lets Richard know that she's doing the same thing. Of course, listeners of the show know that we do see Ruth again. She becomes a character in Omega the Unknown and eventually Defenders. But so, yeah, Richard is kind of left by himself now. We then transition to F.A. Schist, who is telling Wickham that the other reason he's mad that the construction site has been shut down is because he's secretly been using it to search for the Fountain of Youth in the Florida Everglades.
I mean, I love this, 180, this narrative 180, where Gerber was like, well, I'm getting sick of all these stories about the F.A. Schist construction site. I've been beating that horse for a while, but I want to keep Schist around. Why else could he be in the swamp? Wait, in the Everglades, he's looking for the Fountain of Youth. Of course he is. And thus we understand now the presence of these conquistadors.
That's right.
So Schist wants his buddy Wickham to go with him to help him find. He's still convinced the Fountain of Youth is there, and he wants him to help find it. So we cut to the conquistadors, and basically, they're set upon by the Man-Thing, who grabs one of them, and this guy doesn't just burn on his arm, Brian.
Oh no, his entire bursts into flame as if it was made out of very dry kindling, and there is nothing left of him.
Yeah, it's then the Man-Thing pursues these guys as they are running back to what appears to be a man-made construction, some kind of entryway or portal. I don't mean magical portal. I mean like a gate in the middle of the Everglades, where Gerber has told us, no one has been in centuries.
Right.
But these guys, now I didn't understand this, Brian. Explain this to me.
Yeah, basically, it doesn't become clear until the next issue what actually happened to them, but they're terrified of the Man-Thing. They just watched one of their friends get incinerated, so they're running back to this mysterious city in the middle of the swamp. But they are really taxing themselves. It says their flight proves as deadly as its alternative. Exhausted, gasping for breath, they fall and begin to crumble. I'm just going to fast forward. These guys have been kept alive for years by the Fountain of Youth. Okay.
Right.
But they are like hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they're now performing physical feats equal to that of a 20-year-old.
So their dehydration, even though the irony is they're surrounded by water in the Everglades,
right?
But it's not the water they have been exposed to from the fountain, which we'll get into in a minute. The climax of this story.
Yep.
So what you're saying is because they've now exhausted the restorative abilities of the fountain, they become so dehydrated that they wither away to nothing, and that's why the Man-Thing's fiery touch burnt the other guy to cinders.
That's my answer, and you can mail my no prize to me this week.
I that makes entire sense to me. I didn't get it in the midst of this.
Yeah.
So then we come to the gates, or the entryway into this lost city, and a guy with a machine gun, belying the previous statement that no person had ever gotten here within the last couple centuries, comes out to greet the Man-Thing with a rain of gunfire, which does nothing, of course. And so he
tells the Man-Thing, he says, we were going to help you. We'd hope to save you and let you share this place, but now you will only get death.
Yeah.
And the Man-Thing goes charging after him into the city and sees a beautiful paradise.
Yeah, and we have this other great thing. There are other conquistadors inside the city. This is the sort of soldiers that are protecting it. This city built around the Fountain of Youth. And it's beautiful, and it's sort of like El Dorado. And
right.
Again, I really enjoyed this, even though it is a fantastical element, because I enjoyed it because it reminded me of sort of Edgar Rice Burroughs and like all of that stuff, very much an influence here. But these guys pick up a giant wooden post or mast or something and impale the Man-Thing on it. And the Man-Thing's just like, fuck that. Yanks it out of his belly and hurls it at them.
But then this young woman, she dips a pot into the Fountain of Youth and splashes the Man-Thing with this rainbow-colored water. She hopes that it might restore peace to his troubled soul, but instead, there are horrifying results. The Man-Thing drops to his knees in pain, and his body begins to literally boil.
Yeah, his body begins to boil. He's definitely suffering. This woman apologizes to The captain, who is the guy who had the machine gun, she thought the waters might calm him, ease his soul. But instead, the Man-Thing goes stumbling out. The captain refers to somebody called the Fathers, who are clearly the top of the food chain in this community. Man-Thing stumbles back out into the Everglades, falls into the water, and it restores him. As the swamp always does, it restores him to health. But he looks up at the sound of an airboat, Brian, and the arrival. Somehow, F.A. Schist just happens to finally locate the Fountain of Youth. The first time that he and Wickham go, oh, well, we're going to leave anyway. Let's go out into the swamp and try to find, we'll try one last time in the hundreds of miles hundreds of square miles that make up the Florida Everglades. They finally stumble upon it. There's the Man-Thing blocking their way.
That's right. And Schist shoves Wickham out of the way. He says, let me drive this thing. He's going to ram the fan boat right into the Man-Thing. But as we get to the last page, Wickham points out, wait, he's waving his arms at us, and one of his hands is human.
Mm-hmm. Dun, dun, dun.
Which leads right into issue 8, a great, great cover. Steve Gerber and Mike Plug still, Artie Simek on letters this time, and P. Goldberg as the colorist. And yeah, the Man-Thing is still the Man-Thing, except for one of his hands, which is now a human hand. Schist and Wickham ram him with terrible results. Everybody crashes and goes flying into the swamp.
Yeah, and I love that Plug is inking himself on these issues. They're just so good looking. Again, I just can't. I look back at this era, and there are so many artists who just are the standard of the day. You look back and they all kind of have a similar house style, and they're approximating what Marvel wanted from them in the 70s. But Mike Plug was his own guy. Gene Colan, the same thing. You could see in that era, just incredible art.
Yep.
Anyway, yes, the swamp buggy then explodes. The airboat explodes. And then Wickham is pretty pissed at Schist. But in any case, they see the Man-Thing stumble. He sees the fire out there, and he stumbles back through into the place of the rainbow waters, which they call La Hacienda in here, which basically just means the house, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, he's afraid of the fire that Schist has accidentally started, so he goes back to, the one refuge he has from it. And the woman who doused him with the water from the Fountain of Youth convinces the Man-Thing that they mean him no harm. She takes him by the hand and leads him into the city. But Schist and Wickham see this happen, and Schist realizes, that he has found the Fountain of Youth.
He says, we found it. Look at the Spanish costumes those men wear. They must be the explorers who first discovered the fountain 500 years ago. So yeah, it's a walled fortress, Schist says. So they go inside. Schist and Wickham use a vine, a handily placed vine, to climb the wall outside the fortress, over which they see, the beautiful interior of this place.
Right. And we should point out, Wickham is now having second thoughts about everything he's done. Now that he has seen the Man-Thing's human hand and he realizes that Ted Salas is inside of there, he wants no more part of Schist's nonsense.
Well, he certainly wants no more part of trying to kill the Man-Thing, because when he thought the Man-Thing was just monster, he thought he was doing a good thing by destroying it. But now he perceives attempting to kill the Man-Thing as murder.
Right.
So, go ahead.
So, yeah, the woman leads the Man-Thing through La Hacienda into a cavern with a
Her name
winding.
is Lorena. We get her name here.
Yeah, yes, correct. And they go down this winding staircase deep below the earth, where there is some kind of futuristic scientific laboratory.
Because why not? And this scene reminded me of Logan's Run.
Logan's Run, and also Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, they're in this cavern filled with futuristic equipment. We meet the fathers, the leaders of this place.
Two
but they are
shadowy figures. We only see them in shadow right now.
Right. We can tell they're probably deformed. I mean, they're humanoid, but they're clearly not human just from their shadows.
Right.
But they strap Man-Thing to this operating table, and they begin some kind of process that's supposed to help him.
Right. And the process is seeing the result of Lorena splashing him with the rainbow waters. They begin to sort of cover him or infuse him in some fashion with that same water. And as they do, we see the Man-Thing's body shrinking and becoming more and more human.
Right.
Although, unfortunately, still with the Man-Thing's face.
Yeah, exactly. Schist and Wickham interrupt. And, Schist is full of swagger and, he's a braggart, and he comes down. Oh, I'm F.A. Schist. Maybe you've heard of me. And he wants to make an offer to
you
the captain.
You haven't seen another human in centuries, but you probably have heard of me. Now, who does that remind you of?
Our friend Rio yours?
Maybe. Our good friend Rio yours. You're spot on, Brian. Spot on.
So while this confrontation between Schist and the captain is taking place, the Man-Thing, he recognizes Schist, and boy, does he hate him. And he jumps off the table. But this is some of Plug's best artwork ever. And again, it must have been incredibly difficult to pull off. He looks almost human, except for his face. But props to the coloring on this issue as well, because it's really a neat melding of flesh and slime.
Which again reminds me of somebody, and I'm not talking about Rio yours. Well then, basically, Wickham is seeing this now, and he's almost human, but he's coming for us. And Wickham, I think, driven both by fear, but also by guilt. He just wants to get away from here. This is it. He runs off, but Lorena is yelling, stop him. He mustn't go that way. Don't run, because unfortunately for him, he has run the wrong direction and falls off a cliff.
That's right.
Into a bottomless pit, basically.
And the Man-Thing picks up Schist and is about to do the same thing with him, toss him into the cliff or over the cliff.
Yeah.
When
Lorena stops him.
Yeah. And then
she's lived in 200 years she's been alive. She has never witnessed death before. And now that she has, that the serenity of La Hacienda is shattered, which is what we're told here.
That's right.
She is trying to stop the Man-Thing. She doesn't want him to continue this. And he does. He puts down Schist.
And then the fathers surprise everybody by telling Schist, okay, yeah, we've heard of you, F.A. Schist. Tell us your proposal.
Yep.
And basically, in a nutshell, ever the capitalist, Schist wants to bottle the water from the Fountain of the Youth and sell it to the outside world. And, he'll profit from it. And these fathers would profit from it as well. And they agree, which shocks everyone else.
Except the Man-Thing, because he's beyond shocked.
Right.
But yeah, so they're saying, sure, absolutely, go for it. We'll make you a deal. Accept this vial of water from the fountain as a gift. Schist takes the vial and does, of course, drinks from it, thinking he's granting himself immortality, eternal youth. But instead, he yells out and says, I'm on fire inside. What's happening to me? And what is happening to him is what happened to the fathers. Almost 500 years ago, Brian, they say, we too drank of the waters of the fountain and paid the price. They reveal themselves to be basically withered, hideous, red, skeletal, panty-wearing, subhumans, basically.
That's right. If you've ever seen the wonderful film Return of the Living Dead, you are, of course, familiar with the Tar Man. Imagine a red version of the Tar Man wearing a loincloth.
They also remind me of the sorcerer in the classic Lee Horsley horror fantasy film, The Sword and the Sorcerer.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that is what has happened to F.A. Schist. Because as it turns out, one doesn't drink the water from the Fountain of Youth. One is only supposed to bathe in it.
Mm-hmm. It acts as a mild soporific to wash away the tensions, the pressures of living that make everlasting youth a mere dream for most. He says, do you see the irony, Schist? You cannot have both youth and wealth. The demands of the latter eat away at the former. So basically, Gerber's saying, if you all just chill the fuck out, you'll be much more healthy.
Well, Schist transforms into a monster just like the others, and he goes berserk. He says, I'll tear each of you limb from limb and spit on the pieces. And the first person he grabs is Lorena. But he's not the only one who is transformed. The Man-Thing is still stuck in his transformation. And we get one of the coolest Bronze Age fights in all of Marvel Comics, visually speaking. The half-human, half-monster Man-Thing versus the full monster F.A. Schist now. And is Schist is getting the upper hand because the Man-Thing is not himself anymore.
Right. He's weakened by being more human, and the fire that is the frequent the fire that his touch causes is not working on Schist because Schist is not afraid. Right.
Right. But then we get perhaps the silliest part of these two issues. Schist accidentally shatters this vat, which contains all the mucky substance that had been siphoned from Man-Thing. And all of that pours over his now nearly human form.
Yeah. And of course, I think everybody listening to this, 3 people listening to this, understand what's about to happen.
That's right.
Which is when that happens, the Man-Thing is restored to his full bestial self. And F.A. Schist, seeing this, is afraid. Man-Thing grabs him. F.A. Schist begins to burn, and he does, Brian, burn up to nothing but ashes.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Little sound effect for 2020 there.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So
actually, we should isolate that and put that at the beginning of every episode of 2020.
In the aftermath, the fathers decide that it would be pointless to try to resume restoring the Man-Thing. Excuse me again.
Bless you.
This is
they don't want to restore the Man-Thing because, but partially because if they do restore him, he would be human and he would learn their secret. Thus, he would never be able to leave.
Exactly.
So we get this from the fathers by way of Steve Gerber. Then the cycle would begin all over again. Man is still not ready to surrender his baser emotions for the joy of eternal youth. Thus, rather than jeopardize our tranquility again, it is best we let the Man-Thing return to his mindless existence in the swamp. Pity. That's
right. And that's where we end. Now, I have been reading these in their originally published single issue format. Chris has been reading the complete Steve Gerber Man-Thing collections from Marvel. So I'm not sure next week if we start with Giant Size Man-Thing number 1 or if we go to Man-Thing issue number 9. But if it's issue number 9, I'll tell folks right now, if you are a fan of Jack Ketchum's Red, you will be a fan of this single issue story.
Okay. I look forward to it.
Yep.
And I'm glad, Brian, that a sneezing and a runny nose are not symptoms of the coronavirus.
No, it is not. I live in a very rural area. I have the Susquehanna River on my front door, and miles and miles of forest and fields on my back door. And the farmers have been cutting the hay the last 2 weeks in the fields behind me, and it's hay fever. That's all it is.
There you go, hay fever. You know, I feel like there's a horror take that hasn't been done on hay fever.
I'll let you do that one.
No, you live there. All right, brother. Folks, Excelsior!
We'll see you next week.
Defenders Dialogue. You can listen to this episode and all previous episodes for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play Music, and wherever else podcasts are available. Defenders Dialogue is written and produced by Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Our theme music is by Xander Harris. Our engineer is Matt Wilderson. Check out his books on Amazon.com.